was wide open.
After the turnover.
He's got a man.
Harper going deep. Caught.
My gut reaction after Nebraska's 14-7 win over Rutgers, and no matter how you look at it, 5-1 is 5-1. That's kind of how I look at it. And I feel like this next win's probably going to be the toughest win they have, because I said that before at the beginning of the year. The toughest win Nebraska is going to have is win number 6. They haven't done it in so long. It's in the back of their minds, but once they could get 6, it's going to be gravy from there on out. They'll play a lot looser, play a lot better, won't be worried about making a bowl, letting people down. And I know a lot of people say, oh, they're not thinking about that, or we're not thinking about it. It's in the back of your mind. You guys have lived life. You know what I mean. So, but I want to get in a gut reaction and just see what should Nebraska be looking at? What should they be fixing? What should they be doing in the on the bye and trying to improve? Because overall, a win's a win. And I just tip my hat to the defense. The defense did well. Most of the defense did well. But one question I really had watching, and I went back and watched it. And when I go back and watch the game, I look at the secondary. I look at the defensive line. Then I'll look at the offensive line. I look at individual things, positions to see how they're doing. Like the offensive line, was Rutgers bringing everyone, or was they bringing only four players? And yet they were getting in there, and I saw that a lot. So to me, I was kind of a little disappointed in the offensive line. I don't think they did very well. But the one thing I noticed that shined, and we've seen it now since Tommy Hill's kind of been hurt, and that's Ceyair Wright, who I feel like should be a starter. And that's kind of my question. Should Ceyair Wright be a Blackshirt? And I want to say yes. Tommy Hill's got an injury that I don't think is going to be 100% the rest of the year. But if he was 100%, I'm sorry, but I would have Tommy Hill starting, and I'd have Ceyair Wright starting. And if you want to put Buford, back at safety, you could do that. He probably is a better safety than Hartzog. But then you got 2 experienced safeties you could rotate in and out. Because to me, Buford's been struggling, and it ain't just in this game, but he's been struggling throughout. And I've watched this game and watched over and over again. Going back and watching his play, he had a lot of mishaps, from falling down, being out of position. And I don't think he's a bad player. I think safety's probably his most comfortable position. I just don't think he's probably a corner, even though in Tony White's defense, you're kind of asked to do it all. And if the defense struggled, it was definitely in that. And I want to pull up the score and kind of give you guys an idea. I looked it up this morning and kind of verified what I thought after going through it last night. I was up real late going through this game, back through the games. Man, when you watch it again and it's a 3-hour game, and then you're going back and looking at other positions, it's taken 4 or 5 hours. So it was in the middle of 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning before I was done. This is the PFF grade. And you could see this is the offensive side, and this is just in the Rutgers game. This is not for the season. And you see overall and offensively, we didn't do well. You're seeing a backup tight end did your best at 77. Dell, who didn't play the whole game, only played 18 snaps. A 76. You got Micah Mizuka, who only played in 6 snaps. The 73. You have to go all the way down to the 12th player, which is Bryce Benhart, who was a starter, played most of the game. And you can see overall he was a 60 right here, 62.7. He was a 62.7. Pass blocks is 69, which is okay, reasonable. But at run block, 58.9. That's unacceptable. And when you were watching that game, I saw Rutgers, and I know everybody's saying, come on, lay off. They got to win. Yes, they got to win. They got a 1-score win. But I guarantee you Rule's doing this too, because the best thing the best thing about a game like this, and we've had a couple this year, is you got the win, but there's a lot to improve. So he has a lot to sit down, and I guarantee he's in that film room. He's not sitting there talking about how great they did. He might tell us to us, "Hey, I'm proud of them. They did well," but his job is to point out what they did wrong and let's fix it. And tip your hat, Rutgers, and Rutgers has it defensively. They played well, better than I thought they would. No doubt about that. I thought offensively we'd move the ball. But if you look at everything, and if I go back and look at, if I kind of go back and look at the starters right here, you have Dylan Raiola, who only had a 48.2. 48. Pass was 49.3. You see, his game struggled. But then when you go down, you look at Gunnar Catula. Both Dylan Raiola and Gunnar are redshirts, or I mean, excuse me, freshmen, or Gunner's a redshirt freshman, and he had a 59.9. That's not good at all. Both of these are not good at all. His pass blocking was okay, run block bad. It's just, to me, you should be at least in the 70s, preferably mid 70s or higher. 80s is preferable. Jenkins had a pretty good game. Decent game. Had a 70, I'd say just above average. But again, his pass blocking, that's not good at all. 46.2, but had a decent run blocking. Lukowski, again, offensively, not good at all. 56.9, but his pass block was outstanding. And I was glad to see that. I was kind of shocked on the run blocking. I thought he was a little better run blocking, but again, he's you know, he just became the starter, if you know what I mean. And then, of course, we saw Bryce Benhart, see that at 60. You got Ben Scott, 59, senior, Richard senior, 59, 62 pass block, 57. Come on, for an experienced offensive line. And I watched it. And don't get me wrong, for a lot of the game, mainly in the second half, Rutgers did load the box. I was counting 8, 9, sometimes 10 guys in the box, and they were firing off when it was any kind of handoff. You saw the safeties firing down. By the time Riley was handing the ball off to whoever he was handing it off, they almost had almost 11, all 11 guys in the box. And so I didn't know if maybe we should have went to a little more play action, trying to loosen them up. But you could tip your hats there. But when you get into the wide receivers again, Jamal Banks, Isaiah Nair, even Fedoni. Look at these offense scores are not good at all. Emma Johnson, not good at all. Ja'Cory, okay. Ja'Cory had a great run block game, which he hasn't been the greatest at. And so I'm kind of impressed with that. I think that's great. His passing ain't as good, but that's because of more of how maybe the throws to him, where they were at. Everything gets taken in consideration when they're putting these grades in. But you can see Borgacher again. He only played about half the game, but he had a decent game. Again, the passing. So you could see they had a game where they kind of struggled. This is probably Raiola's game. He struggled, where he looked like a freshman. And I don't know if like I said, you got to tip your hat to Rutgers because they seem to do it. It seems like when it's almost like Rutgers knew when they were going to pass. So I kind of thought even the play calling, they needed to mix it up a little bit, maybe on first down, a little more play action. When you hand the ball off and get 1 yard or 2 yards at the most, and then next thing you know, they know you're passing. So I thought play action would have been better because I was watching their defense fire to the ball, them safeties fire to the ball. And that's kind of where you got to loosen them up, kind of like what they did against the fake punt. They were just going all out for the block. And Rule said he already saw how they did this, and saw where they left the gunners. They would stay with him about 10 yards, and that's it. But he convinced himself they wouldn't do that. He convinced themselves they would get out of that because he wanted to call it almost right off the bat when they were down at the 5-yard line, which would have been a gutsy call down there. But if he would have been as wide open as Lloyd was, then it would have been nice. But if he would have done that earlier, then you probably would have eliminated them blocks because then they would have had to lay off on the all out coming after the punter, because I even know Buschini was wondering, well, I got to watch the film to see what happened. Well, when you watch it, it was like the little piggies, too many piggies and not enough tits. There wasn't as many blockers. They brought more that got in there, and one come clean while the others were blocking and got to him really clean right up the middle, because there was really no one else to block him. Just more guys coming than they had to block there. So I kind of thought if they did that a little earlier, they would probably stop that all out, and you could have seen what he was doing. And Buschini even said that on that big punt, the last punt, where everybody was kind of shocked they didn't come after him, and mainly being down, maybe they should have, because you already ran that play, that fake. Most of the time, I'd say 99% of the time, they're not going to run it again. But they didn't come after him, and I think a lot of it had to do with that fake. But Buschini brought up that he was watching the gaps, and they would back off when they were coming. They were all staying in there and coming all out, and then or last second, they would back out of there. And then he knew they weren't, and that's what he said he saw on the last punt. So he was able to take his time a little bit more, and he boomed that big punt. I think it was 69 yards, I believe, down to the 11-yard line, which was huge. Buschini's just had an outstanding year. I mean, the last two games have just been outstanding. To me, probably one of the unsung heroes throughout this year. And he played sore, hurt. I don't think he's too serious. We haven't heard. And he says he's fine, but you could tell he was in pain after being knocked down and flipped on his head in that first block punt. So to me, if you look at this, you have to get down to hear some of these part-time players on that before you get some decent numbers. But even Ramirez, look at his pass blocking, a 0. No one really had, if you kind of go to the pass blocking, Latowski, like I said, had the best. And then you had Dell and Lindenmeyer. So, players that don't play the whole game before you even get down to any of these starters. If you go to the run blocking, you did have Ja'Cory Barney, the smallest guy, wide receiver, who had his best with Janarian Bonner, another receiver. Again, another backup tight end, wide receiver Banks, Borkercher. Before you get to an offensive lineman with a 73, you only had a couple that was even there, and these only played 6 snaps. So overall, offensively, this is probably one of their worst games. I know a lot of people think it might have been Illinois. Illinois, they actually did decent. They just kept shooting themselves in the foot. This is probably their worst offense game. But again, Rutgers defensively, they had it planned out pretty good. They made some great adjustments in the second half. You got to give it that. So now what I want to do, so when we jump over here on the defensive side, and you could see, and if I sort this by how they played defensively, and we all know James Williams just had an outstanding game. He played 27 snaps, was in the backfield continuously. I think he ended up with 2 sacks, 2 or 3 sacks. Should have been easily more than that. I thought the last one should have been a sack when they threw the ball. That should have been intentional grounding. And I understand he was being tackled and he was trying to get rid of it, but he was just trying to get rid of the ball. I've seen it many times called. You're in the pocket or doesn't get to the line of scrimmage. They call it intentional grounding, which gives him the sack. But they didn't matter. They were done. But then you go to Ceyair Wright. This is what I was talking about, guys. Ceyair Wright, who deserved 84.4. Even his run defense was a 77.2. His tackling at 80.3, 82.7 coverage. And if you look at the coverage, 82, then you get to Deshaun Singleton, your strong safety, 71. And then everyone else, like John Bullock, Marquis, C68. This is not good for your starting secondary. Javon Wright did great, but you got to think this is a guy that's just played now. He had a few more snaps and just getting back in the swing of things and did better than you were seeing some of these others do. You have to go all the way down here. If I go down here to Marquise Buford, and you can see Marquise Buford, had a 66.9 overall in the defense, 55 in the run block, 77 in tackling, which is decent. 68 in coverage, and again for a starting corner, that's not good. That's not great. Had a few mishaps, tripped out of position. He got turned around a couple times, and it could just been one of those games. But I've been watching Ceyair Wright since he's come in, and he's looked good in every game. He was a top 100 player out of high school for a reason, and to me, probably has earned that starting spot, that black shirt. I really believe he's earned a black shirt, but I don't know if they're going to do that mainly in the middle of the season. I don't see Rule being that kind of doing that kind of stuff. Now I want to get into Rutgers' mistake because defensively we did well. So a lot of it had to do with Nebraska's defense, but a lot had to do with Rutgers' offense. One, besides that running game, and you saw when they get behind, they're a running team. They're passing, like I said in the preview of this game. They're not as great of a passing team like, say, Illinois was a better passing team, had the running and the passing was a little more balanced. And even though Rutgers can pass the ball, they're more on that pounding it, physical run, and then throw in that RPO or play action. But when they got behind, especially when they got behind 14-0, the later it got, they almost became a passing team where Nebraska could, put their hair back and come after them. But they made a lot of mistakes. They, believe it or not, Rutgers had 11 possessions total for the game. Out of them 11 possessions, 9 were in Husker territory, and over half of them were within the 20 in the red zone. So defensively, the Huskers did well when it got down there, and I tip my hat to them. It's hard to keep them out of there. Rutgers could have easily got points. They could have kicked a couple field goals, and I thought they probably, with it being such a lack of offense, mainly in the second half, I thought they should have been trying to kick field goals a little more, because you kick a couple of them at field goals, and then when you finally did get that touchdown, 2-point conversion would have tied it. But hey, it is what it is. And I kind of wish they would have kept them out of the end zone. It would have looked off better. But again, a win is a win. So what do we need to do? We want to look into the bye week. They got a bye week. We need people to get healthy. Maybe Tommy Hill could get healthy. Try to clean up some of these mistakes. Try to improve on what you need to improve on. And that's what Rule's all about. He loves it when you got this kind of win, because you get the win, but you got a lot to work with, to work out. And he's got 2 weeks to do it, to get ready for Indiana. And Indiana is going to be a lot tougher than Rutgers. Indiana has an offense. And so the defense has really got their work. That's what kind of worry about over there on Buford's side. Hopefully he will get better. And if not, maybe Tommy Hill will shine a little more, will feel a lot better. I don't think so. That kind of injury, doesn't heal quick. It's usually going to go the whole year. But I feel like he needs to, if he can go, I feel like Ceyair Wright ought to play on the other side. Now, will Rule do that? Will Tony White and them do that? Probably not. But you need your best corners out there. We got some great corners. They're just young. Ceyair Wright just got here, but I think Charles is going to be a great one as well. So, and I think Marky's brother Mario's more of a corner than a safety. I think he'll be a lot better corner, but they're all young, freshmen and all that. So it's just in due time. So hopefully they'll get some games in. I'm wondering when Van Poppel's going to be put in the game. Remember, he does get 4 games, and if I'm not mistaken, I think he has not been in a game yet. If he has, I hope not. Then he still has 4 games. We're down to 6. So maybe do you use him in the next couple games, or do you wait till the last final 4 games, just in case someone gets hurt and you got to use them, and then you could still use them and still preserve that red shirt? Again, I thought overall that a win is a win. Overall, together, they got it done when it was a close game. This is a game typically we saw, mainly when they scored late. Don't tell me you didn't start thinking, oh crap, are we going to blow this? That's what I mean. It's something that's happening. It's in the back of your head. You're positive about this year. You're positive about what you've seen with Dylan Raiola. But yet when it gets to that, it's just human nature to that start popping in your head. So it does that with the players too. You can't tell me they ain't sitting there. So I want to tip my hat to them for that, because this has not been easy, and it's not easy when you've kind of went through that over and over again to kind of fall back into that. So for them to hang in there mainly defensively, I tip my hat to them, because they found a way to win. And again, James Williams just had an outstanding game. I want to tip my hat to James Williams. He was in that backfield all over, had a couple sacks, couple tackles for loss. Probably should have been more than 2 sacks, but even when he wasn't sacking or getting a tackle for loss, he was just causing havoc to the point he was making Calic Manus throw the ball sooner than he really wanted to. A lot of them throws didn't look good, and it wasn't because the quarterback was really bad more than he was rushing to throw. And I'm sure the wind didn't help. And in Raiola's defense too, like I said, we said this is his worst game that he's had out of his 6 games, but this is the worst wind day they've had, and that wind is a factor. They could say it's not, but most of them ain't throwing into that wind. But Bushini's looked good, didn't it? We need to talk to Lloyd and why he couldn't make one guy miss, because that's a touchdown. We could have definitely used that touchdown. It's a shame. And the the kick returner barely got a hand on his leg and tripped him up, or he was gone. So I'm sure Bushini's going to give him a hard time. But that was a pretty throw by Bushini. If he could throw like that, maybe they ought to throw that in there every now and then and just keep these teams honest this year. So again, guys, tell me, guys, what you thought. A win's a win. That's how I look at it. It's a win. But tell me in the comments below what you thought of the game. What do you think we need to improve on? What do you think about Ceyair Wright? Should he be a Blackshirt? Should he at least be a starter out there? I think he's earned it. He showed it now. And of course, like always, if you want to reach out to me by email, it's jeff@bigredcountry.net. If you want to hear about something or want to ask me something, please do. And of course, if you don't mind, it's free, it doesn't cost you anything. Please click that subscribe button and like this video, because it really helps out the channel. It puts it in the algorithm, gets it out to other fans, and it's something you could do, and it doesn't cost you anything. And like always, like I said, smash that like button. I really appreciate it. So we got a bye week next week. I'll be probably later on. I'm going out of town next weekend, so I'll push out maybe after next weekend to do a game for Indiana, see how practice goes. Then I'll break down Indiana, give my prediction there. This is going to be probably their toughest game of the year, and yes, that even includes Illinois, because realistically they should have beat Illinois. But they're now going on the road to a very good Indiana team, very good offensive team. So they got their hands full. So until then, guys, go Big Red.